Our opening words are by Aisha Hauser. Some days it feels like it's just too much. Some days I want to hide and shut it all out. Some days I want to channel the ancestors who fought for liberation and for the right to exist. Every day, I want to know when to speak up and disrupt injustice, even in the seemingly insignificant moments. Each moment is significant. Each day an opportunity arises when we can bear witness and choose to disrupt injustice. We are called to the caring and growing of souls, and we are all in this together. As people of faith who affirm the interdependent web of which we are all a part, we are called to become holy disruptors because we are all in this together. I am the Reverend Dr. Anthony Johnson, and I welcome you to this virtual worship service of the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg. As a member congregation of the Unitarian Universalist Association, this church affirms and covenants to promote the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and society at large. On this Sunday, following the United States presidential election, we are affirming the right of conscience and the democratic process. We are broadcasting live today. And joining me in the service are Yvonne Duval, Director of Music, Corinna Ness, Director of Religious Exploration, and Hannah Belzer, accompanist. Today's service is being recorded and will be available on the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg's YouTube page. Because of the continuing danger of coronavirus, the building remains closed, but the church remains open. Today and every Sunday, there's a live virtual coffee hour from 11:30 a.m. until 1 p.m. with breakout rooms for conversation. The church's Roaring Twenties auction, online of course, began yesterday evening and continues through the week. Please check your email and the website at uchbg.org for details and updates. Please send your joy or sorrow via the link in the email you received in the announcement of today's service and indicate whether you give permission for it to be read in next week's service. Whoever you are, wherever you live, whomever you love, whatever you do for a living, you are welcome at the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg.
I invite those of you at home to light a chalice, a candle, or whatever you choose to serve as your chalice at home. We light our chalice and let us remember its origins. The image of the flaming chalice was developed by the Unitarian Service Committee to help identify and advance its work in assisting Jews escaping Nazi persecution in the years leading up to the Second World War. In the years since, its meaning has become wider and deeper. Today, we light our chalice as a symbol of freedom and safety in a world where oppression and danger are all too common, and as a sign of hope for a world where all are safe and free.
Please join us in the reading of the unison words of affirmation. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is our gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to speak our truths in love, and to help one another.
Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned. Circle Circle round for freedom. Circle round for peace. For all of us imprisoned. Circle for release. Circle for the planet. Circle for each soul. For the children of our children. Keep the circle whole. Circle round for freedom. Circle round for peace. For all of us imprisoned. Circle for release. Circle for the planet. Circle for each soul. For the children of our children. Keep the circle whole.
On Saturday, November 21st, UCH will participate in the Beyond Categorical Thinking, or BCT, workshop offered by the UUA for congregations in search of a new minister. The search committee invites and encourages all congregational leaders, members, and friends to participate in this workshop. The Beyond Categorical Thinking program is designed to promote inclusive thinking and help prevent unfair discrimination in the search process for a new minister. Many times we hold a picture of the ideal minister, categorized by age, gender, class, identity, nationality, physical or cognitive ability, race, sexual orientation, etc. With this picture in place, it can be easy to unintentionally exclude ministers who fall into certain categories. So the BCT is a 3-hour workshop with a facilitator trained by the UUA, and in the workshop, UCH members will consider the hopes, expectations, and concerns they have for a new minister, learn more about the ministerial search process, and explore how thinking categorically about people sometimes interferes with choosing the best candidate. So please plan to Zoom in on Saturday, November 21st. It'll be broken into 2 90-minute sessions, so you're not spending too much time in front of a screen. The first session starts at 11 a.m. and the second session starts at 3 p.m. We really hope to see you there.
Good morning. My name is Corey, and I serve as your Director of Religious Exploration. Today's story is titled Come With Me by Holly McGee. All over the world, the news told and retold of anger and hatred, people against people, and the little girl was frightened by everything she heard and saw and felt. She asked her papa if there was anything she could do to make the world a better place. Her papa said, "Come with me." Hand in hand, they walked out the door to the subway. Waiting here on the platform, her father tipped his hat to those he met. So the little girl did too. They rode the train through the tunnels underground. The girl and her papa were brave and kind, and that day they won a tiny battle over fear for themselves and for the people of the world. The news kept telling of anger and hatred. And the little girl asked her mama, what could she do to make the world a better place? Her mama said, "Come with me." They went to the grocery store to buy some things for dinner. Because one person doesn't represent a family or a race or the people of the land. Her mama cooked and the girls set the table, piece by piece, as she'd done all the time. Plate in the middle, knife and spoon to the right, and fork on the left, napkin by the side, water glass. The little girl sat with her mama and papa, and they ate together. Her dog nuzzled her under the table, and she scratched its head. I want to do something on my own, she said. Can I walk the dog? Her parents looked at each other, and they looked at the child. They let her go and sent a message to the world. They would not live in fear. And when the little girl opened the door, the boy across the hall opened his door too. Where are you going? He asked. The little girl said, come with me, because two people together are stronger than one. The girl, the boy, and the dog were happy to be out. One step at a time, they understood what they could do to make the world a better place. They could go on, brave, gentle, strong, and kind to one another and all living things. As tiny as it was, their part mattered to the world. Your part matters too. Won't you come with me?
Today, in this congregation, someone is hurting or in sorrow. Today, in this congregation, someone is anxious because of events in the world. Today, in this congregation, someone is lonely. Today, in this congregation, someone is filled with joy and wants to celebrate. For all the fear and sorrow in the world, there are still moments of joy. We received an email this week, one joy, from our member, Don Brown, who writes, I was honored this week by Elizabethtown College with their Global Peace Fellow Award, for which I was asked to make presentations throughout the school on why government's compliance with their acknowledged ethical obligations was practically indispensable to prevent climate catastrophe. So Don Brown, our member, is out there spreading important ethical words to people in the community, reflecting who we are. And we hear his words with joy, and we think of those who have not spoken or shared today, who may be feeling sorrow or pain. For whatever one is feeling, whatever one is carrying, we offer the companionship of this congregation. We offer to the people who have placed their joy and sorrow before the community. And we express love for those, not only for those whose names are spoken, but for those whose names are not spoken. And love for those who hear. Where there is birth, life goes on. Where there is death, life goes on. Where there is joy, life goes on. Where there is sorrow, life goes on. May we always live in trust and in love, that the joy may be shared and all sorrow comforted. Amen. Blessed be.
I speak to you today ecstatic about the results of the election, and yet also with a heavy heart filled with anxiety. Late yesterday morning, Taryn quickly turned to me and exclaimed, "Mom, Biden won!" He then went back to talking and gaming with his online friend. I only heard his side of the conversation, but it went something like this. Yeah, well, he, presumably 45, can still do a lot of damage in the next 2 months. He will take it to the Supreme Court. At just 8 years old, my son is starting to understand the implications that politics can have on his own life and on those he cares about. I don't know about you, but I certainly was not conversing with friends about politics at his age. As of this morning, 70.8 million Americans cast their vote for the sitting president. This means that almost half of Americans voted for him despite his displays of racism, sexism, inciting violence, and more. They decided his actions weren't deal breakers. We are more polarized than ever before. So where do we go from here? About a year ago, the UCH choir sang a song by Mark Miller and Lindy Thomas, "Show Us How to Love." The lyrics compel communities of faith to respond to hatred and injustice with these words: "Hearts open, minds awake, change us now for heaven's sake. Leave us not in hatred's wake, show us how to love. Hearts open, souls awake, rules we made we now must break. With our very own lives at stake, we must learn to love. Eyes open, shocked awake, much to learn from our mistakes. Draw us closer in our heartache, show us how to love." These lyrics remain relevant today as we learn how to love each other again. Not just those of like mind, but those who may hate us. In my own life, this starts with conversation. In this past week, I have had two incredible conversations, one with a moderate Republican and the other with a very conservative Republican. While we certainly didn't leave having changed each other's views, we did each leave with a new perspective. These conversations can and must happen, starting from a place of love for one another as human beings, beyond party lines. Not everyone is going to be ready to talk, but when the opportunity presents itself, I encourage you to do so. If you find it difficult to contain your frustration or even anger, then politely excuse yourself. Further anguish will likely be the outcome of heated exchanges, and I urge you to be the bigger person. I am far from perfect and find myself resisting the urge to share yet another Facebook meme that could do more harm than good. We have a long road to go as a nation, but my prayer for us is that we will shine our light of love through the darkness to serve as a beacon of hope for others.
Hearts open, minds awake, change us now for heaven's sake. Leave us not alone in hatred's wake. Show us how to love. Show us how to love. Show us how. Show us how to love.
This week has been a week full of so many emotions, from feelings of deep despair to cautious optimism, and now some hope. John Pavlitz, a writer, pastor, and activist from Wake Forest, North Carolina, wrote a blog post this week titled, "We Were Wrong About America," which resonated with my feelings in this challenging time. Here are just a few of his thoughts. Numbed by optimism and ignorance, many of us imagined this week this was a sick, momentary aberration in a system that would surely be remedied after so much ugliness, such open disregard for people of color, such inhumanity toward migrant children, such a sickening failure in the face of this pandemic. Sanity would surely come to the rescue. We were certain that we would collectively course correct and bask in the glory of a radiant dawn referendum of all this bloated bigotry. We thought we would be dancing on the grave of fascism. We thought the good people of this nation would come to their collective senses, leaving behind political affiliations and superficial preferences and ceremonial ties to rescue us from a malevolence that had proven itself unworthy of its position and toxic to its people. We were certain there would be a mass repudiation of the racism that this man has revealed and the violence he has nurtured, because for all its flaws, we really believed America was much better than this. We were wrong. We were wrong to believe that white people weaned for decades on supremacy would suddenly embrace disparate humanity and make more space at the table. We were wrong to believe that kindness and science and facts and truth and goodness would be found more valuable than the fool's gold of sneering star-spangled American greatness. We were wrong to hope that more Republicans would cross party lines in order to defend their country from the greatest terrorist threat in our lifetime. We were wrong to believe that hope would rise up to cast out fear. And most of all, we were wrong about people we know and love. They are not the people we thought they were, and we do not live in this country we thought we lived in. We believed the best about the nation, and we were mistaken. To many oppressed and vulnerable communities, people who have long known the depth of America's sickness because they have experienced it in traffic stops and workplace mistreatment and opportunity inequity and the bitter words of strangers. This may be less shocking news than it is to those of us with greater privilege and more buffers to adversity and the luxury of gullibility. And now we're left with two terribly unfortunate choices. Leave the America we have because it is so very different than the America we hoped for, or stay, realizing that we are surrounded by so many people for whom racism is not only not a deal breaker, but a selling point, in a place we know is less safe, decent, and kind than we wanted. I don't know what the right decision is. Right now, the only thing I know is that I expected something fully beautiful and life affirming was going to mark this day, and it hasn't. I was so sure that even though I know hatred dies hard, that America was going to let love have the last, loudest word. I thought I was wrong. John then closes with these words, but maybe I just have to wait to be right. In the story I read earlier, Come With Me, it is my hope that we join in the Biden-Harris presidential team on their journey to make the world a better place, because whatever part we play, it does matter. Let us continue to show the world how we as Unitarian Universalists continue our campaign to side with love, because love shall indeed be the last and loudest word.
Thank you, Yvonne Duvall and Corey Ness, for your thoughtful and powerful reflections this morning. It has been quite a week. So the question I pose is, what have we wrought? The question that is the title is found in the biblical story of the Israelites 40 years in the wilderness between the Exodus and entering the Promised Land. And in that text, it is said there was no magic, no casting of spells or anything like that that led to the land of Canaan. It was that the Israelites had the guidance from God through the wisdom of Moses, hearing that guidance and speaking it to and leading the people. In the book of Numbers, the 23rd chapter, where there is no enchantment against Jacob, no divination against Israel. Now it shall be said of Jacob and Israel, what hath God wrought? Millennia later, Samuel Morse, in the first public demonstration of his new invention, the telegraph, sent this message from Washington to Baltimore. What hath God wrought? I doubt that in quoting scripture, Morse was denying his human role in the invention. I suspect that he was declaring that to transmit messages over wire was a wonder, and that he did not alone deserve the credit for its invention. He may have even been saying that the human invention of the telegraph was possible only because of the wonder and complexity of all creation. Or he may have felt that it was the holy that inspired him to create this wondrous device where people could communicate instantaneously over long distances. There are people who believe that the divine is actively at work in all human endeavors. Some would extend this to the results of elections. Now, it would be too easy on the Sunday morning following a national election to play gotcha based on whose predictions were right and whose predictions were wrong. It would be more productive to reflect upon the elections and their outcomes and what the implications of these outcomes are for us as a people. In short, to bring the biblical question way down to earth in 2020, what have we wrought? First, we concluded a national election after a long and one would say bitter, competitive electioneering season. An election where the tickets of the two major parties were led by people of very different personalities and very different political and ethical commitments. It appears that we got through the election with no major mistakes or corruption of the process. There were third-party candidates for president and vice president in some states. There were 6 third-party tickets here in New Jersey where I vote, giving us 8 choices altogether. But one of the things I have noticed among leftists, and I count myself as one, was that many of us agreed that this was not the year to use the presidential race for the purpose of building a third party. With the would-be dictator in the White House, the stakes were just too high to risk not making Trump a one-term president. The primaries had pushed the centrist Biden ever so slightly to the left, and I doubt that he would have won without the votes of thousands who would have preferred a much more left-leaning candidate, but were willing to make the best of the choice presented. Negative opinions of the incumbent were and still are widely held. There are Republicans who are convinced that the re-election of their party's candidate would be an existential threat to their very party and perhaps even to the republic. Some of them announced that they would vote for third-party conservative or libertarian candidates. Others announced that, for the first time in their lives, they would vote for a Democrat to be elected president. Whatever candidate they supported or whether they were affiliated with a party or were independents, the voters came out in large numbers. It was the highest turnout as a percentage of the electorate for any presidential election since 1900. And the presidential election was not the only one we faced on the ballot. Every seat in the US House of Representatives was up for a vote, as well as approximately 1/3 of the Senate. There were legislative elections in most states, as well as local elections in many counties and municipalities. I congratulate all of you who took the time to think about the candidates for all the offices they were seeking and any referenda questions you may have faced, and then voted. I congratulate you for voting on those ballot issues. One of the questions I had to decide on in New Jersey was one on the eligibility of military veterans to receive credits on their local property taxes. Too complicated a question to explain, but that was one of the issues. Would we expand the accessibility of property tax credits to a wider categories of veterans? There was another, to extend the deadline to complete congressional redistricting should the results of the 2020 census be delayed. A question of national significance appeared on all ballots in California. Proposition 22 would define gig drivers for companies such as Uber or Lyft as independent contractors rather than employees. California had passed a law requiring that they be treated as employees with certain entitlements to benefits, to protection of employment, and to the conditions under which they worked. The businesses that supported Proposition 22 spent huge sums to keep their drivers from being classified as employees. There are approximately 1 million gig drivers in the state of California. That is a huge part of the working population. And many app-based drivers have been seeking the protection of employee status. Companies such as DoorDash, Postmates, Instacart, Uber, and Lyft all spent a lot of money opposing the protections guaranteed under California law. That is, they were supporting Prop 22. It was the most expensive public question campaign in history. $202.97 million were spent to support the proposition repealing worker protections. The campaign to keep the protections raised and spent $19.75 million. The change in the status of gig drivers passed with 58.39% of the vote. The opponents to the change were outspent 10-1. In almost any matter that is automobile related, what happens in California becomes a model for the rest of the country. The fact that such an anti-worker law could be sold to the voters of California reinforces the reality that we, the people, are not unified. The closely split outcome of the presidential election also tells us that the nation is not unified. Trump's defeat at the polls will not immunize workers from the ongoing attacks on their rights. However, having listened last night to the speeches of Vice President-elect Kamala Harris and President-elect Joe Biden, I am hopeful that there will be less hostility toward workers and the environment from the federal government during the next 4 years than there has been in the 4 years drawing to a close. I was impressed that at the end of the speech, Biden asserted that we must bend the arc of the moral universe. I was surprised even more when CBS commentator John Dickerson identified Theodore Parker as the source of the quote, while noting that Martin Luther King Jr. and President Obama had also used it. I was disappointed that he did not identify Theodore Parker as a Unitarian minister in the 1800s. Well, news reports that few Republicans had congratulated Biden on his election suggests the truth in an article Frank Rich posted in the Atlantic Online a few days ago. His title, "The Republicans Will Learn Nothing from a Trump Defeat." Rich turns Obama's famous phrasing on its head, stating, "There is a blue America and there is a red America, but there is no United States of America." Having heard Biden's and Harris's heartfelt words about there being just one America, I find it troubling to repeat these words. However, Rich is telling the truth about how divided the country is. He goes on to say, much of our immutable disunity is about race, of course, and Biden's victory does not mean that we are on our way to healing. I agree with Rich's assessment. I believe that healing is possible and we need it, but it will take much more than the goodwill and hard work of the new president. It will take a great deal of effort by partisans and by many Americans not affiliated with one party or the other. It will take a willingness to hold accountable those who have disempowered voters and actively maintained the structural racism that both Harris and Biden identified as their speeches as needing to be dismantled. Healing will not be possible without the hard work of justice. That work is needed if healing is to be possible. And Frank Rich warns us that Trumpism will remain part of our political landscape long after President Trump leaves office. In his words, our long national nightmare is not over. Amnesty is not an option. There is so much to do. But now, as of now, what have we wrought? We have elected a president and vice president who, whatever their characteristics and beliefs, respect the democratic process and respect the voters. In electing Kamala Harris, we have elected the first woman, the second person of color, the first person of South Asian agency, and the first child of immigrants to be nominated to one of the two top posts in executive branch of the United States government. We have elected a centrist ticket who, in response to the campaign constituencies, moved slightly in a progressive direction on some issues. But we did not elect leftists, Trumpist rhetoric notwithstanding. We elected centrists. We have not re-elected a president who has demonstrated disdain for the democratic process and the rule of law. Or want to quote Frank Rich one last time, we have dodged a bullet. Finally, we have kept faith with the democratic process and with our fellow citizens. The we speak of, sadly, is not all people. We, the people as a whole, are divided. It is the smaller we, but a majority in this election, of those who are willing and able to join with others over differences, who are willing to take risks and make changes, who are willing to be assertive of what we believe to be right, and yet remain respectful towards those we believe to be wrong, even as we try to change their minds. By doing so, we may be able to bend the moral arc of the universe a little more toward justice. We may be able to say, with necessarily incomplete satisfaction, for the work of justice is never done, to say both as question and answer, what have we wrought? Amen. Blessed day.
Even as we are separated and sitting in your own homes today, the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg is nevertheless a freely gathered church of free people. The church is created, sustained, and supported by you, the people. The church is open even when the building is closed. Each week we share the offering with a community organization. During the month of November is the food pantry. For over 45 years, the food pantry has worked to meet the emergency food needs of people in the greater Harrisburg area. At the start of the pandemic, the number of people served at the pantry decreased as temporary food outlets opened. However, the special pandemic food distributions seem to be ending, and the requests for food at the pantry have been rising again. The pantry is currently providing a 3-day supply of food to about 300 households, 900 people every month. The pantry is managed and operated entirely by volunteers. Pantry operations and procedures were completely reworked to keep volunteers and clients safe. The pantry is located at Messiah Lutheran Church in Harrisburg. It is supported by many area churches, businesses, organizations, individuals, and a state grant. Your support is vitally important. Your financial support and commitment matter. We ask you to please be generous.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
The call to action is brief. Many of you, many of us, have been deeply engaged in this election season. It is not time to become disengaged. There is so much more to do. The new president will need the support of the people, even the people who disagreed with him and did not vote for him. We will need to reach out to those with whom we disagree to work together. The work of the democratic process is the work of every day in the church, in government, in our neighborhoods, in working together, in being friends, in being supportive, and knowing that whatever our differences, we are in this life, this nation, this citizenry together. We need to love, trust, and support one another. May it be so. Our closing words come from Theodore Parker. The hours of religion, which like sunshine goes everywhere, its temple all space, its shrine the good heart, its creed all truth, its ritual works of love, its profession of faith, divine living. Go in peace. Amen, and blessed be.